Alrighty. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Confluent Health's Stronger Together PT on the Move event. We're super excited to have you all here today. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come and spend your evening with us. We have a lot of great information coming for you today. If you don't know about Confluent Health, we are a family of musculoskeletal therapy companies. So we're very excited to share some information with you today about our Voyager program. Confluent Health has developed an internal travel program for physical therapists. After receiving some feedback from students, current therapists alike, wanted to provide that to our people. So we're, again, very excited to have some really great people in our Voyager program with us today. I will now kick it over to Christina Sobey. Christina is our recruiting project manager who oversees our Voyager program. So she has all the information for how the program works, how it was developed, and can answer any questions that you might have. On the subject of questions, if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them in that Q&A button up at the top. We will be monitoring those throughout the event. We will save all the questions until the very end, so feel free to drop stuff in as we go if you have any questions that pop up, and we'll address them all at the end. Without further ado, let me bring in Christina.
Thank you, Emily. All right, I think I'm on. I think I'm good to go. As Emily said, if you guys have questions, there will be the Q&A at the end, but otherwise I'll go through everything here about the program, and then, just jot down questions. Well, I'll answer them at the very end. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and try to, like I've never done this before, but I have. I'm going to share my screen. And I wrote down, I kind of put together just a couple of things that will hopefully help. There we go. As we talk about the Voyager program. Okay, it's very unofficial. I'm not even going to start the actual presentation of the PowerPoint, but just some overall things I want to go through here. So, and I think hopefully we can share something along with the recording after this call. If we can share this PowerPoint for you guys to just hang on to, that would be great. There's some links in here and everything like that. So I'll work with Emily on that. But maybe I should start this actually so we get a little bigger. It's good enough, honestly. Okay, so as we dive into this, I want to share with everyone that Confluent Health has over, I believe, 40 different brands that we support and that we manage. With that, you can see on our website, if you go to the partners, brands and locations, you can take a look at the map of all of our different locations that we have and where our Voyager program exists, if you will, and where we can set up travel assignments. So, and I'll back up a little bit actually. So our internal Voyager program, we created this just under 2 years ago, I should say. So it's very much so in the beginning, it's still in the beginning, I know 2 years, but still in the beginning stages of growing and coming together and adding more structure and just different things like that. So it's pretty flexible. There's more in the works for 2026, which is pretty exciting. So what I'm going to cover today is, what we've done in the last 2 years, what we have to offer right now. And hopefully by the time, I know we have all, upcoming new grads and things like that. So hopefully by the time that you guys or anyone is ready to join in the future, we'll even have more than this or more options to consider about the program. So back to this. These are all of our locations. Most of our clinics are outpatient. So when you're completing travel assignments, you can expect them to be at outpatient facilities. We do have a handful of hospital inpatient settings. There are some outside of LA. There is one, I believe, in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and one out in Georgia. So kind of spread across, but you can expect, if you're going to be traveling a lot and pretty frequently, you can expect to be at the outpatient facilities. So there are, I don't know if I mentioned this, but there are a little over, I believe, 600 clinics across the US that we manage. So we have a lot to choose from. An exciting point is that our new grad Voyagers are actually automatically enrolled when you come on and you come into the program. You're automatically part of a 6-month mentorship program. It's called our Professional Development Program, I believe. It's the PDP. So that means you're most likely in your first location for up to 6 or for a minimum of 6 months, receiving that structured mentorship. Now, that's what we prefer, for you to be in one location for 6 months as a new grad, just so you can really get that hands-on mentorship. However, we have some flexibility. If you're very anti, being in one location for 6 months, we can transfer that mentorship program to a new clinic, a new state location, and carry on your mentorship under another mentor or anything like that as you travel. But and Shay will speak to this later. She's in one location, her first location, for a little bit longer. She can speak to that maybe a little bit more too. But just so new grads are aware, your first location ideally is your first travel assignment is ideally 6 months long. Outside of that, your standard travel assignment lengths are 14 weeks long. So you go to, say you're going to Colorado, you're there for 14 weeks at a minimum, and then we transfer you and you go somewhere else to another location for another 14 weeks. Or maybe it's 6 months long or 9 months long. We're pretty flexible in the scheduling of what works for you and the clinic, just as long as it does work for both parties involved, you and the clinic. So we can kind of play around with timing. If you're looking to be, maybe you only want to extend at one clinic or one location for another 4 weeks after your 14 weeks is up, we can absolutely consider that. I'm the one that works directly with all of our Voyagers. Think of me as your personal travel agent. So I'm the one that works with you guys to plan out all your different assignments, your roadmap, if you will, as you travel across to different locations. We do try to plan those assignments out pretty far in advance. If you are doing that, more frequent travel, if it's every 14 weeks, we typically like to plan out between 2 to 3 months in advance. Now, 2 months at a very minimum. This is because obviously all of our travelers have to keep their housing in mind. They go and figure out their own housing, how that's going to work. There are a couple different sites I've heard of our Voyagers using that are, help out with that. And people do all different types of travel, of how they want to travel, I guess, with where they stay and things like that. So we leave that up to our Voyagers to do as they wish. But the planning out in advance has to do with credentialing as well. So Confluent Health has our own credentialing department. So we work directly, I will help work directly with the credentialing team to submit all your applications to the payers, so that you can get credentialed as a provider and see as many patients as possible underneath those insurance payers. So that is some back-end information, but just so you know, we take care of that for you as a provider when you're working in our clinics. And that's both as a Voyager and a full-time and permanent employee as well. So we work on that, but that is why we do the planning in advance. We help with licenses in advance, help steer you in the right direction. We let you guys go ahead and, pursue any new licenses that you want. And we'll get into that next with the compact states. And we do provide reimbursement for any new licenses obtained while you're a Confluent Health employee, whether that's through the Voyager program or a permanent employee. So kind of on that same note, Voyagers are full-time Confluent Health employees, just as all of us here, all of your hosts here on this call, we're all full-time employees. And all of our regular permanent PTs are also full-time employees. So Voyagers are the same. They are not contract hourly workers through an agency. You may find that in some of the research that you're doing with travel PT work. We are not an agency. So you're not a contractor, you're not an hourly worker working with us. So you're full-time, you're salaried, you're eligible for all of our benefits and paid as such. There was one more point I was going to make about, with the reimbursement, with the licenses. So let me go back to that, because full-time employees are eligible for the reimbursement of licenses. So before I get into all the benefits and being a full-time employee, these are all of the compact eligible states as of right now. I definitely recommend doing some research on all of these states and just keeping an eye on it as things change. You can see Nevada, for example, has enacted their legislation. That could change. Rhode Island and Connecticut as well, which is big. So wherever you're based out of, just know, keep an eye on, if you're planning to travel a lot and from a wide range of places, all of our clinics accept the compact license, makes it super easy to travel. As long as you get your home state license in a compact eligible state, one of these dark blue ones, then you can easily apply for a compact license in another state. And that turnaround time is like 48 hours usually. Whereas, I'm sure you all know, getting a brand new license can take a little bit longer, months, if anything. So, and that's still doable. We still work with that. If you're like, oh, I want to go to Florida next, we'll just plan in advance and have you start that process way before you need to be there. So then we can get your license, get you credentialed, and then have you head there. So, and like I said, we do provide that reimbursement. So do a little research on the compact eligible states when you're thinking about where you want to be licensed, where you might want to travel to, all that good stuff. Okay, going on into, I'm actually going to switch over. I'm going to switch over to our benefits. So as I was mentioning, as a Confluent Health full-time employee, not a contractor, you're eligible for all benefits of a regular full-time employee, just as if you were to, say you didn't want to do travel and you wanted to be hired by Confluent Health at one of our clinics in a permanent capacity, you would receive most all of the same benefits as a traveler. The only thing that is different is the pay, which obviously travelers get premium pay, they get that non-taxable income. But here's a summary of some of the benefits that you're eligible for as a Voyager in our program. So you guys can go through this. Very high level stuff. There's that professional development program. You do get an annual $1,000 stipend to use towards any continuing education, any new certifications you might want to get. So that's kind of exciting. And then you also get an opportunity to participate in things like this, like Shay will talk about later on. She's part of this. We might ask for a little bit of engagement in social media posts or marketing campaigns. So you get a little bit more growth opportunity than being a contractor there's nothing against it, but when you're an employee of a company versus an hourly contractor, we get a little bit more, we get to have a little bit more involvement with your growth and what you can do within the company. So kind of exciting, different, whether it's career fairs or leadership events you can eventually participate in, things like that. So all exciting that you get to be eligible for all those additional benefits of a regular employee, but then you still get to do all the travel and all the cool stuff there. So that's that on benefits. Now, I also want to touch on eligibility with travel. So this applies across the board just for educational purposes. Whether you're traveling part of the Voyager program or agency travel, there is like a radius qualification, basically. So this applies in our Voyager program. If you have to be working and staying greater than 50 miles away from your tax home. So I'll use myself, for example. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. That's my tax home. So if I wanted to travel and receive that non-taxable income, I have to be staying away from my permanent home here, my tax home, and it has to be greater than 50 miles away from here and working somewhere else. So Chicago, Illinois, I'll pick maybe St. Louis. That's definitely greater than 50 miles away. Maybe I find an Airbnb or a long-term stay hotel in St. Louis, Missouri. And that's where I'm going to go do my travel assignment. That is perfectly fine. I can do that. And I'll still receive those stipends. We're not going to ask for, show me all the receipts of the hotel or wherever you're staying or your Airbnb, but the IRS may, and they may look for, they're giving you non-taxable income, which we'll get we'll talk about pay after this, but they may ask for that information. So as an employee of ours, it's our duty to take care of you and advise you and set you up for success. And so we will make sure that, wherever your tax home is, you are staying and working greater than 50 miles away from that in order to receive those per diems. It can get tricky sometimes in bigger cities, like where commuting is, like Chicago's a big city, or New York. I could be commuting 49 miles basically, or 51 miles. And that's if I'm not staying, and that's totally normal here in the city. But if I'm not showing proof that I'm staying elsewhere away from my tax home, then you're not qualified for that travel program. So just keep that in mind. I'm happy to talk more about that with anyone, one-on-one as we start diving into actually being part of the program and travel plans and things like that. So there is that. And then the last thing, which I know is super exciting for everyone as a traveler, is the pay. So I put this together. This is just, sometimes I think it's easier to see it when I talk through this than just talk through it without giving anybody an example. So this is a random example, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is how a traveler's pay is broken down. So you will get something that looks like this from Confluent Health, a weekly total. Now, keep in mind that contractors, which is not you guys as a Voyager program, contractors are usually through an agency paid weekly. However, as a Voyager, since you're again a salaried full-time employee, you'll be getting paid bi-weekly. So whenever you're kind of looking at rates for us, just double the weekly total. That would be what your paycheck would be on a bi-weekly basis, and that would be before taxes. So it is broken down into 3 parts, what your paycheck, what that total number is. These per diem rates, your per diem and your meal rate, these are based off of federal guidelines. They provide the per diem, the per diems for us. So there are different per diem rates, these daily rates. There are different per diem rates per area, per like zip code, or not zip code, per county that you're working in, and depending on the time of year. So say you're going to Florida during the winter, the pay will probably be a little bit higher because it's such a popular spot to go during the winter. If you're going to a ski town in the mountains during ski season, the prices get jacked up. Your per diems are also going to increase since cost of living is a little bit higher. You can expect the rates to fluctuate a little bit if you're living in California or working in California, for example, versus North Carolina. Two different cost of living there, and 2 very different minimum hourly rates. So different things to just keep in mind. I would be the one to work directly with you guys on this. I work with our internal leadership team to make sure that the pay package is competitive with the general travel market rates out there, which they are. So this is a very rough example just to walk through it. Again, this weekly total, which you double to get your biweekly paycheck, is made up of a taxable hourly rate. So this $760, for example, it's $19 a day, $19 an hour per day. And into the week, $760. That is what gets taxed, and that's dependent on whatever you claim on your taxes. What does not get taxed is the per diem rate, which is your travel and your housing allowance. So that's what this number is here. That's the daily rate. This is not per hour, but the daily rate and then the weekly pay. And then you also get the meal rate, which is non-taxable. So those 2 you'll see straight on your paycheck. They will not be taxed. And the strategy behind kind of how we structure this is that we're trying to maximize the amount of non-taxable income that you're getting. It's just straight. If it says $770, you're getting $770. There aren't any taxes taken out of that. We try to lower the minimum hourly rate as much as possible, since that does get taxed and that stinks, but it is what it is. And so we lower that, because you're probably thinking, I'm getting a doctorate. Why am I making $19 an hour? there's reason. You'll see, obviously, then your paycheck comes out to, in this random example I came up with, your paycheck could come out to over $4,000 every 2 weeks. So their strategy behind it, we lower that taxable rate, we jack up as much as we can the non-taxable income. So that's that. I know the pay is always exciting. It's premium pay. It's more than what standard salaries are across the board. So if there are any specific questions, I'm happy to, again, talk through that individually with anyone who's interested. And just know, I think I may have mentioned this, but this total, the weekly total, or your biweekly paycheck will be, can fluctuate a little bit, like I said, based on those per diems, different areas that are different costs of living and things like that. So just keep that in mind. It's nothing that would surprise you or come out of the blue. As we plan your travel assignments, you'd be fully aware of what that pay structure is per travel assignment. So I think that's all I have for, oh, last thing, our Voyagers are eligible for the employee referral bonus program, another perk of being a full-time employee. So if you're part of the program, you can refer anybody, a physical therapist or not, or whatever the eligible referral positions are. Could be a PTA, I believe they're eligible, could be OTs, speech language pathologists. So different things like that, you can refer them either into the program, or you can just refer them to permanent positions throughout the company. And you will receive, as long as they're eligible and all the criteria is met, you will receive an employee referral bonus, which is pretty exciting. So another perk of being a full-time employee and part of the program. I think that's all I have. So just double checking my notes here. I think I'm going to wrap up there and hand it back to Emily. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate all the information. And again, for all of you guys, we will send that PowerPoint out to you so you can click through those links that she sent. We'll also include Christina's contact information so you can reach out to her directly with any questions about the program. But now we will move on. I'd love to introduce to you all Shay Staley. Shay graduated with her bachelor's and doctorate of physical therapy degrees from Marquette University. Born and raised in the Midwest, Shay is now practicing as an outpatient physical therapist in Bozeman, Montana, as a travel physical therapist with Confluent Health's Voyager program. So I will pass it over to Shay. She's going to share some information, tell her story, how she became a Voyager, what her experience has been like in the program.
Hi, guys. Thanks for the introduction, Emily. But yeah, my name is Shay, and I just graduated in spring of 2025. So started working in August, took my boards in July. And so going back to how I first heard of the Voyager program, I had a clinical at Proactive Physical Therapy in Tucson, Arizona. And my clinic director was involved with Confluent and told me about the program, got me in contact with Christina. And so the whole process was very smooth. I talked to Christina over the phone a couple times, and then kind of told her about the spots I was looking to go to. And because I kind of had my eye set on this Montana clinic for a while, and then I just kind of learned as part of Confluence, worked out really well. And then, yeah, process is so easy. So then I was able to do an interview with 2 people from the clinic and kind of get a better gauge on just the atmosphere in the clinic and their experience with outpatient ortho. And so that was nice too, where like you have all these options, given that things work out for like the time you're looking at. But it felt like an easy process, but still wasn't like, oh, this is my only job that I can get. So I'd say that was a perk about Confluent that I wasn't really expecting. And then, yeah, so now I'm at Lone Peak Physical Therapy. And there's multiple locations in Bozeman, one in Big Sky, and then in some surrounding towns. So that's a really cool culture to be a part of because it's a local clinic, but still run by or part of Confluent. So with all like the benefits Christina was saying, and then also just seeing more the business side of the management with Confluent and all they do. Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up at Lone Peak, was just with my interview and then being in contact with Christina throughout it all. And so pretty seamless. And I did know someone in Montana, so that's kind of how I found housing. Because I know that can be a pretty daunting thing with PT traveling. So again, a nice thing about Confluent is the options of maybe picking a spot at first where you know someone and have that connection, and kind of being able to choose where you go there. Yeah, my day to day. So as a Voyager, feeling like very much a part of the team. So it's really nice how everyone like welcomes you and you really feel like you're an employee, and the team mentality, like a Lone Peak, is very much there. And that's how it was in proactive PT2 in Tucson, like clinic director and everyone there just has a very much team mentality. So that was nice. So my day to day, I mean, kind of just looks like a PT. Seeing the caseload and that kind of, as credentialing went through, that was a little bit of a buildup. But it's kind of a nice way to also, as your first job out of school, or if you're thinking of getting into PT, yeah, nice way to kind of flow into it. Yeah, so working at the clinic, and my day-to-day doesn't look, yeah, too much different, but it is nice being at a new spot. Like, I'm from the Midwest, and so kind of wanted to go to Montana, and didn't really want to fully commit of being like, okay, I'm going to move across the country. So it's nice for like the option to go test it out, kind of see how the community is different and all that stuff. And especially if you're like me, where it's like, you don't really want 100% commit at first, it's a nice option to see something new and work for a company, that's good and supports employees. Yeah, and then so kind of right now, for my mentorship of the clinic I'm at, we're doing like a biomechanics-based movements program. So I'm meeting with 2 people every month. So that's really nice, and that's kind of, outside of all the support I have with my clinic director and everyone in my clinic. Like, I'm meeting with 2 people in Lone Peak that kind of runs the program. And so mentorship is like, was very much vocalized even during the interview, which is really nice as a new grad. And just, being in a clinic with other PTs, you can observe and learn, but really having people there to like invest time in you, is a huge, huge perk that I wasn't really thinking when I was graduating. Like, I was kind of more just focused on finding a job. But that is a really cool thing that Confluent does, and make sure that the clinics, travelers go to still get that same experience that like a new hire might always have at other clinics. Yeah. And then in terms of highlights, I'd say it's it's all been great. Like, there's really not a bad part of the program. A highlight has been the stability in the job too, where I'm here for a full year, which worked out really well. And also knowing like where I can go next is really nice. Because with other, third-party travel PTs, you are in communication with someone, and just from what I've heard from my friends, like the communication just looks a little different. So like Christina has been so nice to just know I can shoot her an email, she'll get back to me, and like, you're not really left hanging at this new location that you're at. So that was nice. Having like constant communication, I'd say, has been a highlight. And yeah, kind of just knowing my options moving forward too, is huge. And like, again, people are more spontaneous than other people, but through this, I've learned like going to a new spot, it's nice to know like how long you're there for, and then the options moving forward, or if you want to stay with the team, is a really, really good benefit of the program. And that was like pretty, I'd say, vocalized at the beginning. Christina kind of outlined the process as she did in the PowerPoint, but then if there's room at the clinic, kind of the opportunity to stay with the clinic, stay with Confluent, just makes it all pretty seamless. And yeah, I think that's kind of all I have in my experience. But just like Christina said, if you guys have any questions for me, and any of that. Oh, I will say one other thing. for people who might be thinking about like a fellowship, or they're not sure if they want to go straight into like the outpatient scene and feel like they need another year to kind of get more just education under their belt. Because I think that's kind of something that I've seen a lot with my classmates is this is a good avenue to get exposure to the clinic setting with the built-in mentorship. But then there's also fellowships offered through Confluent and possibly through the clinic you're going to be with. So having that option's great. It's not like you're just going to the job and like that's going to be your job for the next 3 years, 5 years. Like there's room for growth, um, which I guess was also a perk. Yeah, so it's kind of all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. We will open it up to some questions and answers now. So if you have anything that you would like to ask either Shay or Christina, I'm going to add you in again. Please feel free, go ahead and submit those into the Q&A. We'll give you all a couple of minutes to submit that. In the meantime, I will prompt some questions over to you all. So Christina, I have one for you. So mention all of the great benefits that we have for our Voyagers. Can you tell us a little bit more about how health insurance works with our Voyagers? Can they expect any changes when they go from clinic to clinic, for example? Or are we just concerned about those states that might have some different health insurance laws? What does that look like for our Voyagers? Oh, you're muted.
Great question. And I was reviewing some of my notes and realized I forgot to touch on conversions. So this kind of is built into that. So once you join as a Confluent Health employee, you enroll in benefits, just as you would for any full-time permanent position that is eligible for benefits. So you do that once when you come on board, and that stays with you. That is the same thing that stays with you as you travel across different states. Nothing on that side of things changes. So you may have to update, and our HR team would reach out to you directly if anything in the system needs to be updated, or like your tax home or different things like that might get updated if you are changing that for any reason. But other than that, everything stays with you as you transition, as you travel to different states, different locations. I should add, Emily, if you don't mind, I'm going to add another little part to this. So what I forgot to add earlier was that at any point, say you're a Voyager for a year or 6 months, I would hope longer than that. But, if you want to do 6 months, do 6 months, however long. We've had this in the past already, and we encourage it definitely, that you can travel for as long as you want. And if at any point you try out a few different states or just different clinics in an area, and you decide, okay, I'm done traveling and I want to stop travel and become a permanent employee in one location, I don't want to travel anymore, that's amazing. We would just transition you over to becoming a permanent employee, and everything on the back end stays the same. So any PTO you've accrued, that stays with you. Just your employee tenure in general transfers with you. All of your benefits stay the same. Anything you've contributed to the same 401k, if you're doing that, and that stays with you. So all that back end stuff stays the same for you to transition into the Voyager program. The only thing that obviously changes is your pay. The clinic would present you with a full-time salaried offer. You obviously would not be receiving the travel per diems anymore. So that's, the only thing you would lose. Obviously, you're not traveling, but you can switch back and forth. If you stay maybe permanent for a year and then you're bored and you're like me and you're like, I'm out of here, I'm done, I get bored easily, and you want to travel, then the program is there for you. And again, everything still nothing changes. All the PTO you've accrued, everything like that stays with you. And then that pay is just the only piece that changes.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina.
Welcome.
We do have our first question. So we have, thank you for sharing this information and your perspective. And this one is directed at Shay. What is your biggest pull to doing travel PT?
Great question. So I hard to, I guess, sum it up. Biggest pull would be to go someplace and know that you have the option to move if you don't like it. And like you hope to go to a clinic that you like. And again, like it is part of the job, like just making the best of where you are and providing the best patient care you can. But it is nice to go someplace and to, be there, learn how the clinic manages with their patients, how they deal with conflict, all that stuff, and just like see the vibe of the clinic. And if anything, that's going to enhance your perspectives moving forward. But I would say there's a lot of comfort in knowing that, if the clinic just isn't a right fit for you, that it is temporary. Especially if you're someone who like really wants to be in an environment that they, just really vibe with. So I'd say that's kind of looking back on it now, like a really good part of travel PT that you don't really think about too much because you are there for like so long. And especially if it's your first PT job, I mean, clinicals are one thing, but like being there and just being around the people, and this is just like your life now. I think it's a great part of just, the ease of Confluent is knowing that you can go someplace else if you wanted to. And also, I mean, honestly, the pay, like being a new grad and like having student loans, and something Christina didn't touch upon in the benefits. That might have been in the PowerPoint, but Confluent also offers student loan matching for the first. It's like I think 1,200 for your first year if you're paying that much, and then like 1,500 for 2 years after. And so just that is really nice. Like kind of get your feet on the ground, but also not be super stressed about finances. So I'd say those are kind of the two major ones that I could talk about all day.
Awesome. Thank you. All great reasons to join a travel PT program, specifically the Voyager program here. Our next question, I'll pass this over to you, Christina. How is the Voyager program different for PTAs, if at all?
Great question. Different in that the pay stipend is just a little bit different. Your rates are just a little bit lower, being that PTAs are different than PTs. So the stipends are different, but we are still, they were a little bit, the travel opportunities for PTAs got a little bit fewer and further between in the past, but we've since kind of changed a few things around and we're able to make that work. So PTAs are welcome. And we have plenty in our Voyager program, and it's the exact same as far as the process and the planning goes. We don't have to worry about credentialing with PTAs, so we don't have to plan as far out in advance. The only, maybe 1 to 2 months, it's really just housing at that point that we want to keep in mind for our PTAs. That could be a big headache, I think, at times for people. So yeah, same process.
Awesome. Got another question here. And this one reads, this might be a silly question. There are no silly questions here, just to caveat this. I was curious how PTO is determined when traveling. Like say I needed to travel from California to Florida or something, and I'm in between rotations for a week or so. As a full-time employee, how does that quote week off affect me?
Yeah, great question. And this is feedback we've gotten a lot from our Voyagers and something that we're working on, taking into consideration and part of what we're planning to launch and do something new with in 2026. So right now, as a full-time employee, Voyagers, anytime you want to take off, just as myself, anytime I want to take time off, I'm going to use my PTO. So you do have to use PTO between assignments if you're planning to travel for more than just the weekend. And we get that. We've had Voyagers go from California to Rhode Island. That is not going to be done in a weekend. And so, or we've done New York to Washington. People might, ship their cars or they take a flight or whatever it is, they're not driving. So we understand that that's not ideal to just travel over the weekend and then have to take your own PTO for time off between assignments. That is how the program was originally set up, but that's something that we are working on changing for 2026 to be able to offer some more flexible options for our Voyagers to consider. If that's not ideal for them, if the weekend travel is not great, and we have a couple other flexible program options we're looking into right now. then we will definitely be able to have those for our Voyagers to pursue.
Awesome. Next question. How much do you get to choose where you want to travel versus going where people are most needed?
Also a good question. So it is somewhat of a collaborative approach in that I take into consideration every time, okay, every time we're planning assignments, where do you want to go? What maybe region do you want to go to, or anything like that? So I take that, I have that in my notes and on your profile that I keep. And then I use that as a guide to reach out to all of our leadership teams and figure out what openings we have that line up with your timeline of when you're looking to travel for your next assignment. So it's a little bit of a give and take. There's definitely a balance. If you say, New York is not my vibe, I never want to go there, I would never present an opportunity to you that's in New York. And I just wouldn't force that. If there's something you didn't mention and maybe it's a really big need for us, maybe we have whatever the big need is for, I might run it by you. Even if you've never mentioned being interested in that area, I still might run it by you just to see if you might want to entertain it. So there's that. There does come a point where if, say, you're in a certain location, again, here in Chicago, for example, and you're like, well, I really love Chicago. I want to stay through the 10 inches of snow we just got. And I say, go for it. If you want to do that, but we don't have any openings, maybe you were just covering for a maternity leave and that person is coming back from maternity leave, but you want to stay in Chicago and we don't have any more openings at any of our clinics in Chicago. We don't have clinics in Chicago. I'm just using it as an example. If you want to stay, but we don't have openings, then that wouldn't be an option anymore to consider for travel. So I would then present additional openings at other clinics in other states. That's where a little bit of that back and forth collaboration comes into play. So I hope that covers that.
Awesome. We have one more question that I'd love to get both Shay and Christina, both of your takes on. So Shay, coming from your perspective as someone who just recently graduated, has found this job, you've been in it for a few months now, for a little bit now. The question is, does travel PT, the travel PT field, seem to be more, quote, flooded and harder to get into in comparison to normal PT? What was your experience like as a candidate?
I would say depends where you're looking, which I know isn't the best answer. Where I was looking, there aren't too many PT clinics around. So could I have found a job? Probably. Would it be in like an outpatient setting where I'd want to be? Probably not. So I would say, especially if you're looking for outpatient, like travel is a good way to get in the area you want to be in and at least form those connections. Like the other people I know traveling, I wouldn't say it's over flooded. I think there is good hype about it because people do it temporarily. Like I don't know anyone who's traveled more than like a couple of years. But again, that's just me. But I wouldn't say it's over flooded. I would say it's a good way to get in, especially like outpatient in a spot you want to be.
Awesome, thanks. Christina, what's your experience on the other side actually filling the positions?
Yeah, we need PTs. So whether it is not, I think there are probably a lot of options if I were, say, a student entertaining this or whatnot, or a new grad, upcoming new grad. I think there is a lot out there, whether you're going the agency route. There are so many different agencies that partner with a bunch of different locations. And like Shay said, different types of settings. We're going to be the go-to for outpatient. We also work with agencies and we hire contractors where needed. Our preference is obviously to have our own Voyagers and our own employees, but the need is there. So from what I see on my side, on like the operations business side, I don't see that it's over flooded, oversaturated or anything like that. And that's just what I see on my side.
Got one more question. Thank you guys for submitting the questions. Please keep them coming. We still have another 13 minutes, so we're happy to answer all the questions that you all have. Our next question, though, I may have missed this when you were talking about housing, and I know you talked about working together to find housing, but is there a housing stipend? And if so, is it dependent on the cost of living in the particular location?
Yes. So to clarify, we don't provide any, I don't know the best way to say this. We don't provide like we don't have a partnership or a collaboration with anybody that like can support housing or anything like that. I wish that would be so cool. We're not big enough. That's not a thing that we do yet. But we can connect you if you're in an area and you're looking for housing, and we've had other Voyagers in that area before. I can absolutely connect you with a Voyager that's been there before to talk to you. Guys can talk directly about how the housing worked with where you're at, where you went, or you can work with the local clinic before you go anywhere. We always set up conversations. Like Shay said, she interviewed, you have these conversations directly with the clinic leaders there. So, and they live there permanently. So they can also talk to you about, the area and things like that. There are some resources I've gotten from Voyagers, like Furnished Finder. There was another recent one that somebody just sent me. I forget the name of it. But just different like websites that can help with furnished apartments or housing, whatever houses, whatever you're looking for. So there's that. Other than that, we've stayed pretty hands-off with housing. I will not tell you where to live in an area that I've never been to or anything like that. Some people actually, I think one of our Voyagers was driving his own, what are they called? Like RV things. And so he was able to do that, and that really maximized his stipend. So on that note, yes, you do get the part of that on one of the slides, which we'll share again after the call. There, part of that breakdown of your pay is a travel and housing per diem. That's non-taxable. You get that and use that towards your housing. And that does vary. I think that was part of the question. That does vary based on location. It varies slightly. Those per diems are set. There are federal guidelines that set those per diems based on the location and the time of year.
Next question. And I'll direct this to Shay with the caveat that it will vary kind of based on location and the company that you're working for. But Shay, can you tell us what your typical patient to clinician ratio looks like at your current site?
Yeah, so where I'm at now, it's 48 patients a week. And so I'm doing 410s, which is pretty standard. But yeah, so it's about 48 patients per week, which is pretty clear in the interview too. So that's for sure. Or yeah, when I chat with the clinic, good thing to keep in mind. And so I could see up to like 14 patients a day, one day. So it's nice we get the full 40 minutes with the patient. Where I'm at in Montana, they don't use PTAs. So that's also, just varies by state, and that's states I've been in for clinicals use PTAs. So that's also something different that you can be more exposed to.
I will add on that too, that from a company standpoint, a lot of our, like Emily said, varies across the board, but in general, the goal for most of our clinics is to get to 12 visits a day. That's kind of standard from just a productivity standpoint. But every clinic will be different. We'll make sure you get connected with those leaders to talk about the day-to-day and the details. I want to add to that company-wide, and Emily, you may have more knowledge on this, and Shay, I don't know if you guys have done this yet at Lone Peak, but Confluent Health company-wide, we are either have implemented or are implementing the AI documentation. And so that has become really helpful from the feedback I've heard and articles that we get from a company, and just documentation as a whole. So I think that's kind of a nice perk for a PT. I'm not a PT, but it sounds like a good perk.
So let's see, I think that might be all of our attendee submitted questions right now. Shay, I am curious to know, obviously you are enjoying your time over in Bozeman, Montana. Do you have any idea where you want to go next? Any thoughts on what your next assignment might be?
Oh man, I have no idea. I really have no idea. I really do like it here, which is nice. I still have a good amount of time, but I do have family in Seattle, so it's nice that there's some options out there. Um, yeah, so again, just like with the options of where to go, and it is fun to look at the map and know that like, some of them are possibilities, but I really like where I'm at, so we'll see. We'll see.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I think those are all of our questions that we have right now. So we'll go ahead and close this out tonight. Again, thank you so much, Christina and Shay, for taking the time to share information about the program and your story as a Voyager, Shay. If you all have any questions for Christina specifically, if you're interested in becoming a Voyager, we will provide her contact information. Again, we'll also share that PowerPoint presentation. Shay, I will not offer up your contact information, but if you would like to share that with everyone afterwards, if they have questions from your personal perspective, we can certainly do that if you're interested. But other than that, we will go ahead and close this out for the evening. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. We hope that you learned some information and have more of an idea of what it might look like to be a travel physical therapist. And hopefully you're interested in joining us over at the Voyager program. And that is all we have for you all tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Bye.
you.